guys. Welcome if you're joining us. We're still trying to get a few things set up on Facebook. Just hang with us for a second.
If you're out there, go ahead and hit that, put something on the chat. Let us know that you're seeing it. We are still trying to see what is happening on the Facebook stream as well, when you start something from scratch for the first time, sometimes there's some glitches along the way. So we are seeing what is happening on the Facebook stream. Right now, it is not streaming, but we are live here on YouTube, it appears. So if you want to head over to YouTube, you'll be able to see us over there. I know we can't see that on LinkedIn. All right. Well, everyone, just hang tight for a second. We'll be back with you and see what needs to happen to get this streaming.
Are you on the page? All right, so here we are. Welcome. First time glitches. So welcome to our first live. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, if you haven't listened to our podcast, we are Rick and Clancy Denton. We are the co-hosts of the Loud, Quiet, Empty Nest Living podcast, and we are so glad that you guys have joined us tonight. You're going to tell what we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, and you will see a little bit of swivel head here as we try to make sure that the stream is working. And hit us up on the comments and let us know if you're seeing it, if things are working out for you. We are going to go through a series of tips on how we learn to support our adult kids. This isn't something that we learned from a book or anything like that. It just, as we were experiencing the transition of the empty nest, it became remarkably clear that things were going to be different in how we related to our kids. We'd had decades of experience as parents, and we'd had only minutes and days of experience as being empty nesters. And immediately that is the thank you, Gen X. Yes, tech issues are a rite of passage. So yes. But we are going to go through, it's really just sharing what we've experienced, right? We're not therapists. We're not professional experts or anything like that. We are just two people who are learning how to live the empty nest together. And one of the first things that we have discovered is that we had to realize that our role had shifted. Like we had mentioned decades of experience as parents and only minutes and days and just a few short weeks of being empty nest parents supporting adult kids. It really is this idea of moving from where you're the parent and you are the one really showing and leading them the way and in an active sort of way, moving into that mentor role, that coach role.
Yeah, this was a hard thing to step into, and especially with our daughter and a situation that she had as a freshman in college, several states away from us. I'm sure many of you have experienced this with your kiddos. Toxic roommate situation. Everything was fine the first few weeks, and then, fell apart.
To say bait and switch is just understating it. It was really like Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, it really was. To the point that, she didn't even feel comfortable going into her room. She started staying with some of her other friends that she had met in their apartment. And at one point, I looked at Rick and I said, I'm about to get on a plane and go out there and take care of this. But we had to learn that, you know, it wasn't our job to fix this anymore. And in our new book, that is chapter 10, The Art of Not Fixing It, is about this situation. And when we flew out there a few weeks ago, she said, Can I read the chapter? Can I read the chapter? And she was reading it. And so, you have to transition into this new role that you have now taken on.
And there's some practical things that we learned along the way with this. And one is, yeah, like take a beat, because Clancy's not being metaphorical there. There were, airline websites pulled up, ready to look at tickets and that kind of stuff. And it was, wait a second, realizing that our role had shifted and that we had to take a beat and take a step back. This is when our role was more about asking questions than providing solutions. We were always there for emotional support and available for her, but our active delivery of information was through asking questions to help her navigate the path forward. Really seeking to understand the situation before we offered suggestions, because we were parenting from afar. We were supporting an adult child from a distance. We didn't necessarily know the situation on the ground day to day. And so really getting a sense of understanding that situation before we offered suggestions was a key part of succeeding in that.
Yeah. And I think, another thing was giving advice when she asked for it. And on our community group that, you guys can become a part of, one of our group members, Beth, talked about, her daughter's looking for a summer internship program. And she said, being careful with advice and not asking too many questions to add to their stress. And yeah, pelting them with questions when they're at this age is sometimes not the best thing. Sometimes you just have to let them vent and find their own way, and then offer advice when they ask for it. And yeah, I think that's a great point, is the asking too many questions.
It really was, because, and that's one of the benefits of that community is, my natural inclination would be, all right, hey, let's ask all the questions.
What have you been doing? What are you?
Well, and even less direct than that, but more almost trying to just be curious and that sort of stuff. Where really, it is a lot of just listening, and it's a lot, heck, what you learn is being a good spouse, right? Is sometimes it's not about solving, but it's just about listening, and applying that to your adult kids is a key transition.
And that's, a lot of times you have to find the time to be able to have those conversations. And so the second thing that we really learned when they were both off at school is you sometimes have to adjust to their rhythms. And this goes with the kids that are in college, the kids that are in the military, the kids that are now off and in the working world. Everyone has different routines. And we had a couple of people that really commented on this. Zinnia, she said, kids coming home for short breaks in summer and then they go back. And then Damon also said, we're all so busy, we just don't see each other much anymore. And so, yeah, college and young adults, their lives just run on irregular hours and different schedules than ours may.
Yeah, it's so easy as a parent to forget that, because we typically in the adult world, you have a pretty standard rhythm, right? Especially if you're in any sort of corporate or any that kind of work world environment. There's a schedule, there's a structure. But that young adult phase of life is shockingly irregular. For the college kids out there, they're either out late, or they're up late studying, or they're just living a later lifestyle. They're waking up later. Even when they're awake during the day, it's not this body of work, but they'll go to class, then they'll grab a meal, then they'll study for a bit, then they'll hang with friends, then they'll go to another class. There's no linearity to it. And that's true beyond that in the young
Yeah.
adult world and anything else. And so it is really realizing that their world is just different.
Mhm.
And remembering that rhythm can be kind of tricky. Something that Clancy did that I wouldn't have thought of, but she has at the beginning of every semester has asked the kids to either tell her their class schedule or she prints it out with access to that. She by having that visual reminder, even if it wasn't that we were necessarily going to text during that time or anything like that, having the visual reminder of the remarkably disrupted schedule helps us be better at understanding their rhythms do not match our rhythms.
Mhm. Yeah, and, going along with, especially if your kids live close to you, we have our son does live in the area, which is nice. And so being intentional, I stole this from one of my friends. She schedules a lunch or dinner with each of her daughters once a month. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to start doing that. So, yes, I met our son Tanner last Friday for lunch. And I told him, I said, we're going to start doing this on a monthly basis. So, if you have that kind of relationship with your kiddo and they are close enough that you can do that, and maybe it's not a full lunch, maybe it's just, hey, let's hop on a FaceTime call. Hey, let's hop on a Zoom if they live out of town. Just trying to get something on the calendar, but you have to be intentional about it.
And it's it's true that we're talking about tips of respecting their rhythms and understanding their rhythms. Well, that respect actually goes both ways. And a key tip it's kind of inside of this tip is the respect goes both ways with the time expectations. Our son went to college time zones that were 2 time zones away from us. He was out in Arizona and they don't do daylight saving time. And so for a good part of the year, it
Mhm.
was 2 hours
Yeah.
afterwards. Well, not only was he living a college lifestyle, it was also a 2-hour time shift.
Mhm.
And so there would be times that he would be sharing a picture of being out with friends or something like that at
Mhm.
a time that we were deeply asleep.
Yes.
And it was important for us to, well, manage his expectations that while your rhythms are what they are, our rhythms are, we're in bed at that
Yeah.
time. So if you're texting, then there better be blood or law enforcement involved because we don't want to hear it
Yeah,
otherwise.
because like most parents, you have your children on your emergency bypass so it can come through. But yes, I don't need to see you at, the club with your friends. I was very thankful that, he was sending us pictures. But yeah, and the texting thing also is sometimes, you don't need to send a long text. The little short text, if they have a test coming up, or, at work they have some big project due, just sending short little text, hey, thinking of you today. Or if you know that the test or the meeting with their advisor happened, hey, how did that meeting go? Just something that they can respond quickly to. Or we like to send pictures. I don't know if you just saw the cat, he's roaming around. That's our daughter's cat. We like to send pictures of him to her just to, make her smile during the day. And so just simple things like that just can keep the lines of communication going, and you can send those at any time of the day.
Right. And you'll certainly like if you're having trouble staying connected with your kids, that's certainly one.
Mhm. Yeah.
Send a picture of the family pet, and
Yeah.
suddenly there's a response.
Mhm.
The third tip that we'd share of supporting your adult kids is recognizing, look, we all at this stage of life, we've got a lot of wisdom, and there's an opportunity to share that wisdom while you respect their reality.
Mhm.
Things are so incredibly different now than when we were the age of our young adults.
Mhm.
uh, I do know that with sharing our wisdom, we use stories a lot to help share that wisdom. It wasn't "don't do what I did" or those sort of things, but rather we would tell a story of what we did at that
Mhm.
age, and we'd laugh about the things that we messed up in. We'd celebrate the things that we did well at. Under the guise of storytelling, we were able to share some of that wisdom, and it's just a way to. Well, I joked about it earlier that it's like a way to sneak the vegetable inside of a treat, right? The treat is the story and the vegetable just gets snuck in there like they were little kids. Well, now storytelling is a way to do that with your adult
Yeah,
kids.
with the nugget of wisdom in
That's
there.
right.
Yeah.
Little tasty vitamin
Yeah.
inside of there.
Mhm.
Yeah, the things they are dealing with are just simply so different than what we
Mhm.
were dealing with back then.
Yeah.
That while it's easy to say I have all of this wisdom to share with you, and there are universal truths for sure, but recognizing that their reality is different than our reality. Yeah, there are areas where the kids are going to be able to benefit from your wisdom, but they also live in a different world. Jennifer on Facebook shared, she was talking about how is she supporting adult kids? Summer job employment. That is incredibly challenging. There's a lot that we know, and there's a lot now that is so different about getting summer jobs that it is the universe. I say it again, the universal truths are important, and recognizing
Mhm.
how different it is. You were
Yeah.
telling me about someone talking about majors and
Yeah,
picking
we
that.
were having conversations about there are just so many majors that kids can pick from now, and they're not necessarily thinking about, is this major going to benefit me in getting a job when I get out, which you want them to be able to do something that they really love and enjoy. But, that seems to be the running theme right now is, we have so many friends whose kids are graduating and they are just having so much trouble finding jobs. And, a lot of people, when they started school, let's say, 6 years ago, the major they chose, well, now coming out, 2 years ago, AI has changed some of those majors that there's not as many jobs available now. So, just helping them navigate through some of that stuff, which, we don't necessarily have the wisdom in that area.
No, it is completely different. Now, I did see we have a question that
Yes.
we've received from Brandy and Brian, right?
Mhm. Yes. Brandy and Brian asked, what are your thoughts on when to step in and when to step back as adult children make bigger life decisions? So I was actually having this discussion with someone, and she was telling me a story, and her advice was actually really good. And I really like this, so I'm going to share it. If you have a kiddo who, and this had to do with, trying to figure out what they wanted to do in life, which I know is the big
Boy, that's
overarching
a
question.
pretty simple question.
Right.
That could be knocked
It was
out.
basically, what do they want to do
Just knock it out
as
in
a
that form.
career?
Yeah.
And so while the parent themselves couldn't really offer, what the child needed, they had a friend who was in that area, and so asked that friend, hey, would you be willing to talk to my child? Oh my gosh, yes, I would love to. Connected. That friend said, hey, you're in the area that my child might be interested in. Would you be willing to talk to my child? Of course. And so parent swap.
Yeah.
There you go. I mean, if now sometimes your child may not be open to that, but most of the time, if they are really trying to figure it out, and they're going to want the help that you're offering. And I thought that was just
Oh, it's brilliant.
genius.
I was actually listening. So anyone listening that is in North Texas and knows The Ticket, the Musers podcast was actually talking about this topic this
Oh
morning.
yeah.
And they were talking about who influenced them in their lives. And while talking about teachers and coaches and that aspect of it, they also talked about how I would often listen to the same thing that my coach said much more than the same words from my parent or my teacher saying.
Oh, for
And
sure.
so the idea, it's funny that not making this up.
Yeah.
It was on the Musers podcast this morning that they were talking about who influenced their life. And it is that parent swap or third party swap.
It totally sounds different coming from someone that you're not so close to. Yeah.
Another one about where you get the opportunity to share the wisdom but respect the reality. Aaron on Facebook mentioned apartments to First Homes is how she is
Mm.
actively supporting her adult children. And that's another one where there's some universal truths, at least for us,
Mm.
higher movers,
Yeah.
higher
Yes.
movers for
Yeah.
the heavy things. I still remember.
Wait, you don't realize how awesome those college apartments are that are fully furnished
Oh my
until
gosh.
you move them into
Yeah.
their first adult apartment that has nothing. Yeah.
And it's always up 3 flights of
Yeah,
stairs and all the,
uh-huh.
it was moving into one of my apartments, but I still remember with your brother trying to carry some
Uh,
heavy solid wood coffee table from Antiques Furniture up the stairs, and I
Huh.
probably damaged my relationship with him forever. So that's another case of certainly there's a lot that parents can do to support them, just simply being available. If you've got the truck or
Huh.
if you've got the manual labor, if you've maybe got the checkbook that can help with the move, that sort of thing. Now, I will say that when it comes to purchasing first homes, that's an example of the reality today is much different than what we were experiencing when we were going after our first
Yeah,
home.
but some of the basic principles are the same,
Oh yeah,
and so that is where a parent can, because I would assume that most of us have, purchased at least one home, if not, several, or been involved in some sort of, you know,
certainly. Yeah, it
some purchasing event of something.
now
So you can, offer some sort of support in that way.
now here's where I'm going to actually go against the tip that I actually said here. Earlier of don't force your advice on them. Well, here's a case where there's universal wisdom that the current situation doesn't really appreciate. I had to make sure and help my son realize you actually have to go check your
Oh
mailbox.
yeah.
Like
Yeah, they don't
there's
check
actual
mail.
paper
Yeah.
mail that shows up that's actually important.
Yeah.
There are gas hookups or electrical services,
They're
and
not
yes,
used to that.
you can pay your bills online, but you need to check that mailbox. So that was a wisdom there.
Even at school, even when they were at college, if like, I would always send them stuff electronically, but my
Yeah.
mom would still mail them a card and I'd be like, hey, you have a card coming.
You
Go
gotta,
check. Packages wouldn't come in the mail. They'd be out in front or in those big
yeah.
lockers. So they always knew that. But yeah, the mailbox, nope.
It is. It really is blending from your world and sharing examples that are universal truths while understanding theirs. One that we were talking about the job search. There is a universal truth of how vital networking is, and I think a lot of kids understand that. But I know that I didn't necessarily in college, and I've seen some of the young adults not necessarily
Mm.
understanding that it's really the relationships that get you that next job. You can throw all the applications out that you want. The reality is it is going to be who you know, what relationships you've built, and almost your culture fit, your character, your personality will be more of a match than the skills. And that networking is a universal truth, which is then combined with the current reality of finding a job is completely different now than it was
Mhm.
before.
Yeah.
I'm actually an example of a person that truly did get a job out of an advertisement in a Dead Tree newspaper, and that clearly does not happen
Yeah. No,
anymore.
I mean, back then it was just, okay, everyone was, in one location and you just went in and, I came out of the nursing world. So yeah, I mean, it was very easy to find a job. And luckily, if you are in some of those degrees still, it is easy. But yes, it is just it's tough out there. And I'm hearing it from all of our friends that are going through that with their kids right now. And talking about drawing on your experience and being transparent with them like we
Mhm.
talked about before, and being open and honest about your experiences. Matt from LinkedIn put in, his boys are still teens, but he said, they're not always interested in talking to me or listening to me, but I want them to feel like they can always approach me even in their adult years. And this is one thing that I have always stressed, especially with my younger moms when I've been a mentor mom, is be honest with your kids from the beginning on their level, but be honest with them because they will appreciate that honesty and they will want to come back to you and keep coming back to you because they know they can. Some of the things you may not want to always hear, but we've had a few of those situations. But you have to remember that they are trusting you, and that is what you want so that they will continue to do that as they go into their adulthood. It was so nice, like this week or last week, I guess, our son, he's in a great relationship, and he called us and said, "Hey, I need some advice." And I was like, "Oh, yay." It's just so nice when they call and they, want your advice about something. And so just I would just stress
Mhm.
that, just, and I and we were very open and honest, and I have told them things that, I'm not proud of that I did as a younger person.
Remember the
And
storytelling that we were
yeah,
talking about earlier?
but one thing that's different for us versus them is we did not have social media.
Right.
So there's no evidence of anything anywhere.
You can deny
So
anything you're
yes,
talking
that
about
is
now.
right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but they did appreciate, those stories.
When you've developed that kind of relationship, and we sincerely believe that even if that relationship doesn't exist today, there's a path forward. We know that there are situations that are more complex than what we're describing, and
Mhm.
there are people
Oh, yeah.
much more professional than we are to help guide and navigate through those. These are the experiences that we've had. This is what we've had when we think about those three tips of, realizing that your role has shifted, adjusting to their rhythms, and then share your wisdom, respect their reality. You know, all of that kind of adds up. We've had to support our kids in some pretty emotional elements too. We're talking a
Mhm.
lot of tactical here, and then even like the emotion of the toxic roommate, even that had some tactical elements
Mhm.
of it. There's also just the pure play emotional aspect of it. There was a time over spring break that I'm sliding down a slope and the phone rings and it's our son. Now I was with my daughter at the time. You were somewhere else.
No,
So
I was on ski. I was on
you
another. Oh yeah, but
you, you were
I was on another
you
run.
were
Yeah.
slightly away
Mhm.
from us. And whenever your kid calls, you tend to pick up, especially
Mhm.
when it's unexpected, because our son was on spring break down in Mexico. We're at a slope in Colorado. And ooh, I'm getting choked up. The moment that he started talking, I knew something awful
Mhm.
had happened. And without we're not that's not our story to tell, but he had shared with us that one of his fraternity brothers had passed away
Mhm.
tragically during that trip. And as he's crying, I'm on the slopes crying, trying to navigate, supporting him
Mhm.
through this on that emotional level. I think a lot of what we're talking about here, those tips, help build to that moment where we were able to be available for him. And then later,
Mhm.
when you and I got together, you were able to support him, because honestly, that's you want to talk about really supporting someone from afar
Yeah.
when they're in a major crisis. You're not supposed to hear about your 20-year-old son's friends passing away
Mhm.
tragically.
Yeah. And at a time that is supposed to be, it's spring break. I
Mhm.
mean, it's supposed to be fun, and then they all just want to come home, and so then you're trying to book them all flights to get back. I mean, yeah, it was just, it's something that you know they will never forget. They will be able to share that experience with their kids and be able to support their kids when
Yeah,
they, hopefully don't ever experience anything like that, but
yeah.
other friends that have gone through that. So, yeah, that was just something that, we,
Well,
the learning to go from, that was a time that the coach and mentor, I think, turned back into the parent, because God, you just wanted to like be there and just be able to hug him. And we were like, should we just leave and meet him back in Arizona just to be there? But he was okay. They just wanted to all be together and go back together.
yeah,
And
and that's where it was though. Some of these things that we're talking
yeah.
about here is, we've lost people, and so we were able to share our wisdom, but it was
Mhm.
clearly a different reality that he was in there. That idea of this was not a place where we were dictating. Like you didn't. There was a part of the parent that wanted to go, well, are you safe? Are you doing the all of this?
Mhm.
And again, without getting into details, because it's not my story to share, but yes, everybody was safe. Everybody, it was just a god awful tragic accident, and so it was more about what do you need from us. He
Mhm.
wanted to get home early. Like, how can we navigate that? Some of the travel logistics kicked in, but the first part was just simply being
Yeah.
there for him.
So yeah, that yeah.
You got to support your kids in some real stuff.
I know, yeah. And you know, we've all, yeah, there's ups and downs, and when you're experiencing, you know, life, there's ups and downs, and there's ups and downs in the empty nest. It's an emotional roller coaster,
Yeah.
and like we always say, feel the feelings, feel all of the feelings,
Mhm.
and you know, there's highs and lows to everything, and it's, you know, we are having a lot of fun in this phase, and then there are things that snap you back into realizing, you know, there's sad emotional things that happen as well. But you know, we hope that you guys are really enjoying this time, the empty nest, and we're so glad that y'all joined us on this live. We're, you know, excited to add this maybe to our
Mhm.
repertoire.
You get to see kind of the clunky side of it,
Yeah.
not the polished
Yeah.
podcast side
Yeah,
of
I
things.
know.
And I think that's something that some of you may not even know about. So, and maybe you do, but if you wanted to know a little bit more about the Loud Quiet, or even, you know, let's see, can I point? I'm not a good weatherman, but
Yeah.
that is the cover of our book that is out right now, and you can find that on Amazon. You can get all the places that you would expect to buy books, but let's be honest, most of us head over to Amazon and buy a book there. If you want to get to know a little bit more about us from the podcast, or we have a weekly newsletter where we're talking about this and sharing elements like this, and also the Facebook community where a lot of that input for this episode, this live stream came in, and where we're all sharing ideas and helping each other out through this emptiness phase. All of that can be found at theloudquiet.com. And my last thing I'm going to share with you is if you wanted to get a free copy of the introduction of the book, and if you wanted to then join the newsletter, I'm putting a QR code up there. All of this is at theloudquiet.com as well. But if you go to this QR code, you will be able to then get a free download of the introduction to the book. We are now going to open it up for Q&A. Anybody that has any questions, if you've got anything that you wanted to ask, this is the chance to see how good we are on our feet. Anybody got any questions out there? Well, I know we've got at least one. Well, Brandy and Brian are supporting the heck out of this from a question perspective. So you want to take this one?
Okay. They said, where do you feel like the line is between supporting an adult child well and accidentally enabling them? Yeah.
Okay.
This one is tough because I always want our children, even in adult life, to be comfortable.
Yeah.
And that, you know, that's.
I think in a lot of these, all the tenets that we just described still apply here, right? So if you're supporting them through sharing your wisdom and understanding their reality, if you're focused on realizing that your role has shifted, that you aren't the one in charge anymore, and adjusting all that still applies. But when I think about, are you enabling a behavior that could be problematic for them? A lot of it comes down to, and again, I have to stress this, we're not therapists.
No.
And so this is just the experience of two people that are trying to figure this out together. The moment at which it becomes something that is going to be significantly disastrous to their life, not just detrimental, maybe it sets them back a little bit, but you see someone that is making a choice that could have permanent life altering consequences, that's where you might be a little more active in stepping in. The ones where, if they just need to stumble and get a little scrape on their metaphorical knee as they're a young adult, but they'll be all right. Yeah.
Well, I would say that, but I would also say if it's something that you do and then they come to expect you to keep doing that or to do more, that's when
then you're really getting the enabling. Okay.
That's when I
what's an example that you're thinking of there? Put you on the spot.
Okay. Well, say your adult child has an apartment, has a job, they get laid off. Okay. they're having a hard time finding employment. They don't want to move back home.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
okay, maybe you pay their rent 1 month. Okay. Then they expect you to pay it the next month.
Oh, I see it. And then
You
it's
know,
this
and then it
recurring
just
pattern of
yeah.
that.
So, where do you, draw the line at support versus enabling? And so
Yeah.
that's what I see it as, like a
Oops.
cascading, and and that can come in so many forms: financial, emotional. I
Yeah.
think when they start to take more than they should be taking from you is when it starts to becoming enabling.
Especially in the young adult phase, because
Mhm.
I'm channeling some another podcast that I listen to, Scott Galloway, and somebody was asking about parenting and fatherhood and that aspect of it. And he said, "Well, you got to realize from the beginning that you are not getting an ROI in your emotional investment with your kids. You're
Mhm.
putting more into them than you're getting out of
Yeah.
it. So it's not that at that before the young adult that you can expect some sort of that aspect of it, but when you start to see that you really are stunting their ability to launch through what you're doing, as
Yeah.
opposed to being a safety net
Mhm.
that protects them from the catastrophic
Yeah.
failure, then it really moves into that enabling
Yeah.
space. That's a great
Yeah.
question. That's a
Mhm.
challenging one.
Yeah. Mhm.
Thanks a
Yeah.
lot.
Well, and I think we looked at it from two different, perspectives. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Any other questions out there? Well, you can always
Mhm.
come to us. We're always open to bringing new ideas into the podcast
Mhm.
itself. And so if you've got a question, maybe that'll be the next great topic on The Loud Quiet.
Yeah.
So be sure and reach out to us through the website, theloudquiet.com. Share your ideas with us
Mhm.
and get connected a little further.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. We really appreciate it. And this was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye, buddy.
Bye.